Okay,
Right.
so say Godfrey Bloom, really, really welcome. And I'll tell you something. In moments like this, make me emotional. Why? I'll tell you why. Because people like you, like like classic liberals, like in UK, you and USA, Ron Paul, or Poland, for example, our boss Janusz Korwin-Mikke is a long, difficult name. You're getting older, and I can't see any replacement. Any younger people, preaching liberalism is all now socialism and socialism. And the best proof is after socialist Tory government, we have even worse, even more socialist Labour government in UK. And yeah, if you can explain me why and what's going on with the British, and not only British, like all the West, like Western people, why do they love so much socialism?
Well, you make an interesting point. I think there's been a disconnect, a major disconnect in the West, in the Western Hemisphere. We have representative democracy, and of course, it's not representative. So the country voted overwhelmingly a few years ago for a conservative government because they wanted a conservative government. They wanted Brexit. They wanted all these things. And of course, it didn't come about because the Conservative Party is fundamentally a socialist party, as it has been for many decades since the era of Margaret Thatcher. It is fundamentally socialist. And the individual Conservative MPs are socialist or certainly left wing or certainly well to the left of the centre. And this is one of the problems we have. And so your choice is a left wing government of some description. Of course, when David Cameron got into office, and he said, I'm the heir to Blair, we're the heir to Blair. And we all thought, what are you talking about? We thought we got rid of Tony Blair and his criminal, evil government. And so they were unashamedly about it. And so consequently, we suddenly realized after several Conservative Party prime ministers that we hadn't got conservatism. We hadn't got it. So at the next election, at the most recent election, the Conservative Party were wiped out. Now, the Socialist Party, the Labour Party, didn't increase their vote. What happened is everybody stopped going to the polls to vote Conservative, and that let the Labour government in with a very big majority. But it's not because everybody voted Labour. They didn't. It was only 20% of the electorate. But we have a flawed system. We have a flawed system which doesn't reflect. It's not. It's not what it should be. It should be representative government, and it doesn't work. They don't represent us. And if you see the demonstrations that were in England a few months ago, there were millions of people taking to the streets in London saying this isn't what we want. We don't want this. We don't want any of it. And this is the most unpopular prime minister, most unpopular government, I would argue, possibly in history, possibly in the history of the United Kingdom. And so the system is flawed, not the people. I haven't met anybody who wants this government, who supports this government, not a single soul. And the government and the problem that we have in this country is this massive split in the population. And it's not old or young. It's a mistake many people make, old or young. No, that's not true. And it's not even based on in the indigenous population's social class. The problem that we have is that people who work in the public sector and people who work in the wealth creating sector, this is your divide. And this is something that people haven't, or the media haven't fully hauled in. And until they do, I don't think things can get very much better because it's very difficult fighting against legacy mainstream media who don't understand the real problems that we're facing. And the public sector are spoilt. They have high salaries. They're unsackable, index-linked pensions, shorter hours. They're not responsible to shareholders. They're not part of the wealth, and they're growing exponentially. There are over 6 million people in the public sector, and it's growing every year. So there's a whole load of people, 6 million, with a vested interest in voting for a government that looks after the public sector. And this government is part of it. So that is your problem. It's the political system. It's not people believing that socialism is a good thing.
I'll tell you what, Peter Hitchens was talking about it years and years ago, like saying, I'm going to vote for Labour to destroy Conservative Party because it's not Conservative Party. And maybe the failed Conservative Party is going to be replaced with proper Conservative Party. And now Peter Hitchens, as you know, he urges people to leave UK, to leave as soon as possible, as long as you can, because maybe in a few years time it won't be possible. Yeah, they're talking about exit tax and stuff like that. Is it really hopeless, you think, like as Peter Hitchens says?
Yes, and of course I was agreeing with some of my neighbours here. I have a small holding in East Yorkshire, very rural, and sometimes I was speaking to people in the village and so on and so forth, who thought that if we got rid of the Conservative Party, we knew it would be worse. Although they didn't vote Labour, but they knew if the Conservative Party get kicked out for being not conservative, for being cheating, a lying and cheating party, getting rid of them, it would get worse. We knew that, but we thought it had to get worse before it could get better. We had the same phenomenon in the late 1970s when we had to get rid of a socialist government and bring in the government of Margaret Thatcher, which was only very marginally to the right of the centre, incidentally. It wasn't a right-wing government as you and I would understand it, but it was certainly to the right of centre. But her cabinet weren't to the right of centre. But there we are. This is the sort of problem that you have. So now there's a dynamic which is new. There is a dynamic which is new, a very new phenomenon, if you will. And that is you can always recover. The United Kingdom has a history of recovering from all sorts of things, civil wars, economic collapse, great wars, all sorts of things, and we can recover. And any nation can recover. What we have at the moment, though, is something which is going to be consistently more difficult to recover from. And we have a massive immigration crisis from people with a different set of values. So consequently, they don't want to integrate. They want they don't want the principles of English law. They want Sharia law and all these things. Now, if that's what they want, that's okay. I'm a libertarian if that's what you want, but don't come here because you're destabilizing this country. And you must go to the countries where there is Sharia law or whatever you want, Islam of one description or another. If you don't want to integrate, I'm afraid the long and short of it is you're not welcome. Immigrants who integrate, of course, are welcome. And I've said this all through the Brexit argument. And of course, as you know, I'm married into a Polish family. And my father-in-law, who was a tank commander in the 1st Polish Armoured Division, was an Anglophile. He believed deeply in the principles of English law and the English thing, and was a very successful businessman. And right up until his sad, rather early death in his early 60s, he believed in the principles of a liberal democracy and the principles of English law and our heritage, and very deeply, very deeply. And of course, people who come to people in the wealth creating sector, people who are immigrants who come to that are welcome, in my view, very welcome. And of course, one has to say that this is a Christian nation, or was a Christian nation. And of course, the Poles that were coming, the people coming from Europe, were broadly speaking, they were Christians, maybe with a Roman Catholic bias, perhaps, but that doesn't matter. They didn't have a problem with our ethos and our views, and they would integrate. Now, these people now, in their millions, who've come in, who do not want to integrate, they're not part of the wealth creating sector, and consequently, digging ourselves out of this hole is going to be very difficult indeed, because there is only one option, and that is to send everybody back home. That is the only option we have. Are we going to rescue ourselves? And at the moment, we do not have main political parties, legacy parties, who believe that that is the answer. But it is sadly the only answer. And the baby will go out with the bathwater if we're not careful. And the good people that have come and joined the wealth creating sector, let me just suggest the Sikhs, for example, which my old regiment had a very close relationship with, people who are coming to this country who are very good members of the wealth creating sector, so on and so forth. But we have too many people who have no intention of working, no intention of integrating, and I don't know how we can get out of this problem without sending them all back. And that's going to require a complete abandonment, one might argue, of our traditional liberal values.
You mentioned Sharia law, but you forgot about lovely curry chicken, as Piers Morgan would say. Curry chicken is better than freedom. And you talked about Margaret Thatcher as well for a while, and that proves that the cancer, if there is a cancer in your body, has to be cut out completely. Margaret Thatcher stopped socialism for a while. Once she was gone, the socialism, exploded again. That's the same USA, Ronald Reagan, and the same other countries, unfortunately. So yeah, economics is obviously bad. I can tell honestly. People were asking me, Seb, why are you still in UK? Because of other problems. We'll talk about them in a minute. But economy was still okay. Unfortunately, recently, taxes are going up, as you know, in the new budget. National insurance contribution is going up. So it affects my company now as well. So I'm thinking now, our daughter is still for another 2-3 years at school in here. I think we'll be coming back eventually. But it's not only economy. You've had, say me, there were people, I'm not aligned with Tommy Robinson or people around him. However, whenever they came to the town here in Wrexham, I would meet them, I would speak to them, I would speak to anyone. I did it last time. I admit I got scared because I said, sorry guys, because of new government. I don't want to see you. We can text each other. I can help you. I was trying to find a venue, because they got obviously cancelled another venue, but I'm not meeting you. I'm getting scared now. You've heard about George Galloway. If you could comment on that, he was stopped in the Gatwick airport, and he was like police stopped him for 4 or 5 hours. He was questioned, and now I don't know if he's in Russia or anywhere in Asia. He left UK. He's afraid to come back to UK. Well, what's going on?
This is, of course, a very serious problem indeed. And George Galloway and I are on the opposite sides in many ways of the political spectrum.
I know.
I have been one appearance on his show. But of course, we are as one when it comes to the freedom of the individual. And this cross transcends boundaries. I mean, the late Tony Benn, for example, you couldn't be further away. We couldn't be further away politically, if you will. But the one thing that we both agreed on without any hesitation at all was the freedom of the individual and the principles of English law and the principles of our democracy. Now, this is what's been lost. And this is a very disturbing thing because it's been lost in our politicians. Well, that's all right. We can get rid of them. We know they're all going to go at the next election. I'm not sure who's going to replace them. I think the Conservative Party is going to be dead for several decades, as they were in the 1800s, of course, after the repeal of the Corn Laws and so on and so forth. The Conservative Party have gone through these problems before, and they've been out of office for a long time. And maybe this time round, I don't know that they've gone forever. I don't know. But certainly the Labour Party has gone forever. But what has disturbed me more than anything, I think, is that arguably the police force that we had in this country was the best in the world. It was acknowledged to be the best in the world. I never heard it disputed 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, even by other police forces of other countries. Now we have a police force which is totally politicized, which is full of what I would argue, well, politicized leaders of the, which is totally against the ethos of this country, and those in uniform, with some noble exceptions. I count a number among my friends, but broadly speaking, especially in the Met Police, they are thugs in uniform, and they would have been very at home in East Germany in the 1950s. These are nasty people of not a formal education. They're not very bright, and you've only got to look at them interviewed, quite senior police officers who haven't had the benefit of a traditional education. I don't know where they come from, but they're really, really quite disgraceful. And they don't police the nation on the basis of the ideas and ethos of Sir Robert Peel, which founded the police force in this country. You do not see policemen on the beat anymore. They are reactive. They sit down side streets in vans, maybe 12 at a time. They wear visors and crash helmets and tasers and all the rest of it. This has been getting worse and worse and worse, and now it's at a stage where the police, I would disband the police, I would disestablish the police and start again, and start recruiting people who've had the benefit of a traditional education, people who are prepared to police their own societies in the proper way, and that's all gone. The Crown Prosecution Service is politicised, and of course we have Fabian judges. We have socialist judges, university-educated police who are probably Fabians as well, or certain say Fabian leaning. Where does one start? Where does one start? We can't bounce back from this like we bounced back from socialism in the 80s because it's run too deep. And I think we're going to have to, I don't know whether we're going to have some kind of civil war. I don't think we're going to have a civil war. I think we're going to have a kind of revolution which is much more akin to the French Revolution than a civil war. I think there's going to be a rise up against the establishment and deep state. And I have to say, until we have that, nothing I can see is going to change.
Oh, it sounds terrible. French Revolution. When I hear that, it's just like but hold on. Yeah, you said about next elections, which are coming not that soon because it's over 3 years now. But there's Welsh elections now and Scottish elections, as far as I know, next May. And it looks like Nigel Farage and his Reform Party is going to gain lots of seats. Do you think it's going to change? Is it going to trigger any crisis maybe in the Starmer's government? Or if you could comment on that, if Nigel Farage took over the power in UK, is it going to change anything? Because as you know, his party is not the same party as years ago when you were there and much more libertarians. What do you think about that?
Well, it's very difficult to say. I'm not very, very sure. I don't know how, as we know, for Reform Party is a limited company with a board of directors. This is a totally new phenomenon in British politics. And we have, I would argue with Nigel Farage, I would say he's a trimmer. And it's a word that you don't often hear these days, a trimmer. I think he likes to sail before the wind. He's not really an anti-establishment figure in any way. I know him extremely well. He is what might say a Macmillanite conservative. He would have fitted into a Macmillan government in the late 1950s or 60s very, very easily. And fun enough, he finds himself in charge of a party called Reform. He's not a reformer by definition. He's not really a reformer. He wants to tweak things about. And I don't see that that's what is required at the moment. And I quote, if I may, Ben Habib, who said, "We don't need a fox, we need a lion." And that's the difference. We don't need somebody who's going to trim and fiddle about. We need somebody who's really, really going to stand full square. And I don't see that, although I hope it is true. I hope it is right, but I don't see it.
Did you know Nathan Gill? Sorry, what was his? The guy who got to prison just now. What was his surname? How do you pronounce it?
I think it's Gill.
Gill. Yeah.
I've never met him. No, I don't know him. I'd long since left UKIP. For the time
Yeah.
he came into
Just wanted
politics.
to ask because they asked me in Poland about him. He got to prison now for I don't know 8 years or 10 years, something like that, because
Heavy
of
sentence.
because of his speeches in European Parliament, which were I think it was Crimea crisis this year, 2014. He was saying some stuff like this: Russia is not that bad, whatever. Apparently, they proved him. He took some money of Russians, like £30,000, and he got to prison. It's a bit scary, isn't it? You go into prison for talking, for giving speeches in the European Parliament.
It's extraordinary. His sentence, I don't know very much about it, I've got to be frank, but his sentence was very substantially more than raping a child of 12. Now, it depends where you stand in the moral dynamic. For me, taking £40,000, if that's what it was, for espousing the Russian cause is one thing. Raping a 12 or 13-year-old girl is something else. And they get 5 or 6 years and he gets 12. There's a moral decay in this country, I fear, which runs very deep in the Crown Prosecution Service. It runs very deep in the judiciary. I worry about this deeply when, on the one hand, you get a sentencing policy which is so out of kilter what ordinary people think. I mean, I'll be brutally frank, I would hang people who rape 12-year-old girls. I can't see any of that, but that's just me. I would hang them. For taking £40,000 for a political view, I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I would have thought a couple of years, absolute tops.
Exactly. And if you look at USA, UK is pretty much the same. USA, there are some criminals who were arrested like 15, 20, 25 times. They're still on the streets. And eventually they kill somebody and they go to prison for, I don't know, 10, 12 years and they're out again. Oh, that's obviously outrageous. Godfrey, I just wanted to tell you as well because I said about we spoke a little bit about Reform Party was completely different when you were. I remember, like I said, makes me emotional seeing you in the European Parliament talking to these idiots there about taxes, about all this stuff, about freedom. And pretty much the same happened in Poland. Now, our boss, Korwin-Mikke, was libertarian always. He was talking to people for 40, 50 years. He got eventually kicked out of his own party. Much more moderate people, youngsters, took it over, and it's not Freedom Party anymore. It's another socialist party, it's another opportunist like Reform Party now. And that's why I said it is like makes me sad because these people like going away. But I wanted just to tell to like British viewers what's happening in Poland because now I can see all over TV, like press, people talking about Poland, Eastern Europe, like successful country and stuff like that. Unfortunately, it's not the truth. What they're doing now there is the same as here. I can see it because I'm 20 years exactly in UK. I see Poland now as UK 20 years ago. Immigration is through the roof. You know the Dominik Tarczyński, the very popular fellow who says zero immigration is another fake Tory. During his government, we got admitted the most immigrants ever, millions to be honest. Taxes are going high up. Even in here, if you pay like let's say 100 to 300 quid national insurance contributions a month, in Poland is 500 straight away. Even before you make any penny, you have to pay on the top on up before the month starts. That's why the most people like years ago came to here because of the national insurance contribution stuff like that, taxes, and they repeating exactly the same mistakes what happened in the West. And I'm seeing it. I'm like sitting like that and I'm thinking like, what the hell, people are you doing? It's gonna be the same unless it stops. It's gonna be in the next 10 years in Poland or the whole Eastern Europe is gonna look the same as Western Europe. And especially that Poland has no chance to leave European Union. We're in the European Union. Whenever some MPs, not the whole parties, they try to stop European Union law stuff like obviously they can't because the European Union law is above Polish or any country, any national law. So that's just my message to people, to you and English people. We're doing the same mistakes in Poland, and in a few years' time, maybe 10, maybe 15, Eastern Europe is going to look the same as Western. That's just wanted to say.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I thought they were. I didn't realize there was an immigration situation. I I thought that they were doing all the right things there. I don't know about the tax situation, so on and so forth. That disappoints me. That disappoints me. I just don't know how we're going to move forward. But of course, what I do know, what I can say as an investment strategist, I spent 50 years in the City of London. I'm as an investment manager, and I understand economics, Austrian school economics, of course. That I know that if something can't go on, it won't go on. You cannot have a welfare system which is come one, come all. And if you go back in history to the Great Britain in 1943, there was a man called Beveridge, and he wanted a system which would put a safety net under people who had fallen on hard times through no fault of their own. And that was the concept of welfare. And then there was a national health system which came in 1947, 1948. And the idea of that was everybody paid a stamp once a week. They paid their stamp, and that entitled them to healthcare. In the same way, if you go back 100 years before, not 100 years, but if you go back 50 or 60 years before that, Lloyd George brought in a system where you paid your stamp and that gave you a modest pension when you retired, which was unnecessary because we had mutual and friendly societies and we don't need that. No country needs compulsory charity. No country needs to have the government at the threat of violence, which is actually going to prison for not paying your taxes, to take from one citizen and give it to another. It's morally bankrupt. What you need is a country which is very lightly regulated, very lightly taxed, and those people can be philanthropic with their money if they want to. And we're a generous nation in this country. We per capita, we're very big contributors to charities. But you've got to leave people with their own money, so they can contribute to charities. It's difficult to contribute to a charity when two things happen. First of all, the government takes a lot of money off you, so it doesn't leave you much of your own money. And the charities have been infiltrated by weird people who are on very big salaries at the top of the charity. If you look at most of the charities, you'll find that their chief executives are on huge salaries, 150,000, 160,000 pounds a year. This is the problem that we've got, and very little of the money actually goes to where it's supposed to go. And who licenses charities? The government. It's another government-sponsored institution, the big charities and the legacy charities. Very, very difficult to deal with because everybody's got their hand in the till. But, and here's the but, it can't go on forever. You cannot go on and on and on spending government money, regulating, bringing everybody into the non-wealth creating sector. You can't do that. You will have a total and utter collapse of society. You can just see the bellwether. You can see the bellwether on that already. Look at the price of gold. Look at the price of gold in the last 20 years. It's gone up and up and up. And that is a sign that your fundamental economic structure is failing. When people resort to the historical money, which is gold, which has been gold for thousands of years. And of course, I'm quoting J.P. Morgan in 1912, only gold is money. Paper money is credit. And we're seeing that now. And people, it hasn't got to the retail end yet, but even the central banks, the international central banks are collecting gold. They're buying gold because they know where we're going. We know that paper money is going to fail. Retail hasn't yet got there. The ordinary man in the street has not yet, because he hasn't got much money, is not yet buying gold, but he will, or silver, because there's nowhere else to run to. And we'll see that in the coming year, I think, and we'll see the price go up even more. I think it will all double again. But of course, the price of gold and silver isn't doubling. It's a collapse of paper money. That's what's actually happening. And of course, we saw it in the Weimar Republic in the early 1920s. We saw it after the war in Hungary and places like that. And we saw it more recently in Zimbabwe, in Africa, the collapse of paper money, because it's simply fake. And we see that. And when money collapses, see, nobody goes to the barricades with a full tummy and 2 cars in the garage. But those days are coming to an end, and people are already getting very, very angry. And when that starts to happen, you'll see some kind of revolution. I don't quite know what form it will take.
It will happen. Elon Musk formed this Dodge department, and he looked into it. He tried to fix some economy for like 6 months, and then he said, "No, fuck it. It can't be fixed. It can't be fixed. It needs to collapse." That's what he said. And you said about devaluation of money. It happened during my life in Poland. 1 to 10,000. They devalued the currency, Polish currency. And like I said, in '90s, that was good time. The Polish economy exploded, and then Germans or European Union saw what's going on. They said, no, stop. You have to join European Union. Otherwise, the Eastern Europe is going to become too rich. That's why they kind of pulled us into European Union. And all these years I was here, they expanded now welfare, benefit system. We have Colombians, we have South America and Poland, we have Africa and Poland now. Obviously, Ukrainians, because of the war, is millions. And it's like all the hotels the same, not as much as here. Hotels full of immigrants, and Polish people quite happy because they get more benefits. They work for them. So now it's more and more strangers in Poland. So like I said, if you didn't know that you know now, if you could just give us like a message to Polish people not to repeat your mistakes. So maybe one day, Eastern Europe is going to help Western Europe, Western, Eastern.
Well, yes. I'm always amazed at how people behave. And I was so amazed at the behavior of people and what they think and why they think it, that 2 years ago I did a psychology course with the Smithsonian Institute. I'm an economist by profession, a fund manager by profession. And I didn't understand why people behave in this manner. And so I tried, and I sat through lecture after lecture. I'm still not much wiser because they couldn't really tell me. Nobody really knows. But what did come out of it, I think, which was relatively agreed with across the board, and that was 80% of the people in any country. It doesn't matter whether it's Poland or France or the United Kingdom. 80% of people go with the flow. 80% of the people are really asleep. Now, I don't mean that as too much of as a nasty criticism. Most of us are living lives of quiet desperation. You're trying to pay the bills, trying to look after your family, and so on and so forth. And of course, I don't know about Poland, but the educational system in this country deliberately doesn't teach people about money, doesn't teach people about banking. It doesn't teach people about the principles of English law. It doesn't teach people about their unwritten constitution. Most people think we don't have a constitution. This is the problem. And I can assure you, being a guest lecturer at Cambridge University for some time, years ago, on the Austrian School of Economics, you will be surprised how undergraduates at a great university like Cambridge University don't know anything. The faculty don't know anything. And I was lecturing at Newcastle University last year. Oh, no, more than last year. It was a few years ago now. And it was fascinating because one of the drinks afterwards, one of the undergraduates, he was a third-year undergraduate, third-year economics undergraduate at Newcastle University, which is a fairly reasonable university. And he said he went to his tutor to say, why is it that we only hear about the Chicago school, the Keynesian school? Why is it that we never hear about the Austrian school? And the response was from the tutor, if you want to know about the Austrian School of Economics, you should be reading philosophy. And that I found was fascinating because it means that his tutor didn't know anything. And another quote I got from his tutor, I can't remember which university, well, the argument's settled. Keynesianism is the way forward, and the argument's settled. It's a bit like the climate scientist people say, yes, the climate science is settled. No, it isn't. Nothing is settled in life at all. And to assume that Keynesianism or the modern climate ethos, which is really closer to a belief system than it is to science, all these things, and of course, the 80%, it doesn't matter in a In a situation where a democracy, if 80% of the people go with the flow, believe what they hear on the BBC, and all this kind of thing, you only need 80%, don't you? It doesn't matter what the other 20% think, because every time we have an election, the 80% come out and vote for the numpties that we've got. Even then, the last election that we had, there was some local election, I can't remember what it was. Still, there was still 20% of the electorate voted Labour. How could anybody vote Labour? How could anybody today go into a ballot box and vote Labour? Have they had a lobotomy? What's wrong with them?
Listen, now the most popular party is Reform Party. And I keep asking people, because when I spoke to them years ago, when it was UKIP, I tried to persuade them to vote UKIP. No, 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 because it wasn't popular. Now, since Reform Party is popular, I'm voting Reform. Why, I'm asking? I don't know. Because it's popular. That's it. That's what you said, 80%. And you said about kind of maybe incoming revolution, French style revolution. I don't know if you watch closely in USA now is a split in MAGA party. Nick Fuentes, young, is not conservative at all. Lots of people, millions followers, young man, and he openly says he's a national socialist, Nazi, obviously. He says, yeah, proud of it, and he says, yeah, the future is national socialism. So it can be very nasty. Poland, pretty much the same. People have enough now, and they call it, they think is liberalism. Obviously, is a you can tell in Europe is fascist state, which regulates everything from the birth to your death, and they think is liberalism, and they have enough, and they for national socialism. So I'm thinking it can be nasty times ahead of us if you could just close like closing statement. What do you think? Is it coming national socialism?
Well, yes. I mean, we all. If you look at fascism, if you look at it's used, of course, as you know, in the main as a derogatory term. Fascist, you know, students shout fascist, and it's a pejorative kind of term. But of course, it is a political system. Fascism is a political system. And I've written articles on this particular to try and explain to undergraduates what fascism is. Fascism is simply a political alliance with big business and banks. That is fascism. And they control the economy from the outside. They control it, they regulate it, whereas communism, of course, is the ownership of production, and that's the difference. And the difference isn't as big as people think it might be. But the European Union is fundamentally fascist. And as I say, I do not use that as a pejorative term. That is, it's an alliance between powerful politicians, big business, and the banks. And if you can't see that, you really shouldn't have a vote. You should be disenfranchised. It's a fascist system, and in everything but name. This is the sort of problem that we have. And it's very difficult to get away. As I say, when I go back to my Smithsonian Institute, if you have 80% of the electorate are simply going with the flow, and if I may pick up on the problems that America has at the moment, this is my own personal view. And of course, America tends to lead on a lot of these things as far as the Western Hemisphere is concerned. I would argue that the concept of the United States was ill-conceived from the start. If you look at the American Constitution, which I regard as quite a good document, it was never the idea that Washington would control all the states would control themselves, and they would share certain aspects of political power where it was quite obviously a natural thing to do and a beneficial thing to do. Those days have long since gone. And of course, we saw when the Confederacy wanted to secede from the Union, the Americans had a war. And the Americans today, even their academics, believe that it was a civil war, which of course it wasn't a civil war. It was the North against the South who wanted to secede from the Union. That was what the war was about. What came later was the pretense that it was about slavery to actually gloss over the fact that 600,000 American men died from the North and the South, and it was extremely expensive. And the Constitution in 1861 was virtually thrown away then. We have a flawed system. California has absolutely nothing in common with South Dakota. They don't think the same. They don't run the same. What you have to do is go back to the whole concept of a United States, and that everything should devolve upon the states. And then you would find that broken states like California, the people, as they are already doing, would leave and go and work in Texas or South Dakota and so on and so forth, where the taxes are lower, crime is lower, so on and so forth. Now, Britain is a little bit too small to do something like that, and Poland's too small. But what we can't do is all be crammed into one system when things are so different and things are so obviously failing. America now, the United States, is a failed state. The European Union is a failed state. The United Kingdom is a failed state. And it's failed because we've abandoned common sense. And we've abandoned the principles of English law and common law. We've abandoned the principles of family. We have no religious dynamic. We don't have no Christian ethos. I'm not saying everybody's got to go to church, but you have to have some kind of Christian ethos. And I would just sum that up as saying, do as you would be done by. And we shouldn't have any system which benefits one group of people over another, which we have now. And the irony is, we have a system which benefits a minority over the majority, which of course is a powder keg. And I think, which is why we're more likely we're going to end up with a French-style revolution, which of course benefits nobody. I'm not advocating it. It was an appalling, and of course they actually went back then. They chopped everybody's heads off, and they had the terror and all the rest of it. And they went back to the Napoleonic system, which just went back to exactly where it was. It was just Napoleon's brothers and sisters and cousins and aunts all got called princes. And so nothing actually worked particularly well. And of course, it was a very warfare, an expansionist system, of course, which we're seeing now of NATO as an expansionist system, and nobody benefits from it. The fundamental unit, the tried unit, thousands and thousands of years, doesn't really matter what country you come from, is the family unit, certainly with Christian values. That is the key. That's the key. And you can't have this great homogenized people with lots of people getting advantages and people getting, as I say, it's not just on race, it's not on ethnicity, even it's on, do you work for the public sector or do you work in the wealth creating sector? That's your divide, that's your fundamental design. And of course, the immigrants, broadly speaking, coming in of the public sector because they live at the expense of the public sector. They're not wealth creators. And there was a research the other day, which I saw came out, you probably saw it yourself, Seb, that 5 out of 6 immigrants don't actually contribute anything to society at all because we live in a welfare state. Totally at odds if you look back to the immigrants from who went to the United States 150 years ago, who bought into the ethos of the United States. They bought into the concept of freedom, democracy, and the principles of common law. And they went there to work. And the first people that got there, of course, worked very hard indeed. And it was only their children and their grandchildren that started to benefit from that. But they worked all hours that God sends. There was no welfare system. And the worst thing you can do, to finish up with, the worst thing you can conceivably do is to pay young men, particularly young men, for doing nothing and hanging around a hotel and giving them 3 meals a day and bits and pieces. It's a recipe for absolute disaster, and it doesn't matter what nationality you are. If you pay teenagers to lie on the sofa and do nothing and get paid, they will get into mischief. Idle hands, the devil will find work for idle hands, and nobody's allowed to stand. And one of the reasons I got thrown out of UKIP was for espousing those views. By Nigel Farage. Work that one out.
Also, the most common argument is when the immigrants come in here, they work for NHS, nurses, doctors. It's state job. It's not private job. It's paid from our taxes. They state, workers like NHS, police, army, all that stuff. Lots of so. People obviously don't understand it. Godfrey, thank you for that. It doesn't sound optimistic, but I always was, and I'm still optimistic, you know, hoping for the best, expecting the worst. Christmas coming, so Merry Christmas to you, and hopefully next year, I'm still hoping after Welsh elections, Nigel Farage gains some seats. Maybe I'm too naive, but I'm hoping something will change. Maybe will not. We will see.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. That's been really great. And yeah, let's just all enjoy Christmas, a traditional Christmas, incidentally, which are getting more traditional every year. This is a pushback. It's a pushback, isn't it? We now in my community here, in a rural community in East Yorkshire, I'm seeing more and more Christmas decorations. Our carol service at the local church has never been so well attended. Every year, more and more people come along. So perhaps there's hope. Perhaps there's hope for us. Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research based, and I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So surprise won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.